Hello, Julia, and any other friends who happen to watch this video, but this video is for Julia. Miss Julia has some pain in her low back, a little bit of carpal tunnel, and some pain in both knees. So when we go through today's practice, I'll be addressing those things. You don't have to have those issues in order to do this sequence, of course, but if you do have any of those issues, this would be a good one for you to hop onto. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to start lying down on our backs. So come on down and lie all the way onto your back. I forgot to tell you at the beginning, you may or may not want 2 blocks, but that's just depending on your practice and whether or not you have them. If you don't, you can still do the practice just fine. So lying down on your back, go ahead and slide those shoulder blades down the back, just gently rocking from side to side, arms out, palms up. You can either extend the legs out. For many of my friends who have low back sensitivity, that can become difficult. So Miss Julia, you may choose to put your feet on the ground, right? Anyone else, of course. You just pretend your name is Julia if you're not Julia, because I'll be talking to Julia and then it'll sound and seem like I'm talking to you. Let those feet walk out just a little wider than your hips, no wider than the distance of your mat, somewhere in that realm, right? Turn the toes in just a little bit and let those knees lean towards each other. And that should not hurt in the knee joint at all. If it does, you can go right back to feet hips distant, but we're trying to get those hips to soften here. One hand on the belly, one hand on the heart. Still the elbows a little wide and shoulder blades down the back. And close the eyes. And then go ahead and start to tune in to your body today. So as you scan through your forehead and your eyebrows and the muscles around your eyes, and tuning into the jaw and the inner mouth, the tongue, anything else in the face. Scanning through the neck and the throat. All the way down to the shoulders, and from the shoulders down through the arms. All the way through the hands and the fingers, but maybe pausing for a moment on those wrists, since we know that we have some wrist issues. And just checking in. And, pardon me, and then bringing that awareness into your chest and your upper back. And letting that awareness start to trickle down through the mid-rib cage, through the belly, the low back area, pausing in that low back area and checking into that low back today, this moment. In the low back can change from the time you wake up until an hour later, etc. So just making sure you really know what you're working with before we go into the practice. And then bringing the awareness into the hips and scanning down through the upper legs, pausing at the knees, paying attention to those knees. Again, I'm taking extra moments on those areas that often have pain. And then go ahead and continue to scan through the lower leg, the ankles, the feet, and the toes. And hopefully you have a pretty good idea of where your physical body is. Now go ahead and bring your awareness into your breathing body. And one of the nice things about having the hands on the body is you can really tune into the breath with the use of the hands, the help of the hands, right? As I inhale, my belly on my hand on my belly starts to float up, and then my hand on my chest. And as I exhale, that hand on the chest starts first, and then the hand on the belly finishes it off. And go ahead and just take a couple of breaths like that, just tuning into your breath, the movement of the breath. We're trying to deepen it without putting a lot of effort in. We still keep the shoulders and the jaw and everything else soft. And then with your next inhale, go ahead and open the eyes. And you'll walk your feet back into hip distance, tee the arms out to the side, palms up, and then with the knees apart, now let the feet walk out as wide as your mat, right? And once we move into windshield wiper, it shouldn't be knee joint issue, Miss Julia, so if it is, or any of my other friends, make the motion smaller or maybe walk the feet together. But if you can take the distance of the mat, this is going to start to get into that low back and hip area for us. Go ahead and take an inhale, and with an exhale, let the knees swish over to the right. Left hip can lift.
Inhale, let the knees come on up. And then exhale as the knees swish over. Again, let the pelvis be soft. The right hip will probably lift off the earth. And inhale back up to neutral. Now this time as the knees head over to the right, that head might turn to the left if that feels okay in your neck. Inhale back up. And exhale, knees to the left as the head turns to the right. And come to center. This time you're going to pause. And when your knees make it to the right, your head can turn to the left. You're going to take a second and you're going to pause there. Instead of stacking the foot on the knee, that's not always great for my friends who have knee issues. I'd like you to imagine that I have one hand on your left shoulder and I have one hand on your left hip. I'm going to hold that left shoulder in place and I'm going to really gently stretch that left hip a little forward and to the right on a diagonal. And again, see if you can do that for yourself, but it shouldn't go into the knees at all. And then inhale, go ahead and bring that back up to neutral. Let the knees head over to the left, turn the head to the right. And once you get there, again, imagine, if you will, I have one hand on your right shoulder and one hand on your right hip. I hold the right shoulder in place as I stretch that right hip kind of forward to the left a little bit on a diagonal, more forward than to the left, quite honestly. And then go ahead and bring that hip back down, bring the knees back up, walk the feet back into hip distance. Let's go ahead and hug that right knee in towards the chest. And you can interlace behind the shin or behind the thigh. Again, I'm just going to point out knee stuff since I know Julia has knee pain, right? Behind the thigh is usually gentler on the knee. And you can even bring it right up and cram your hands right into the knee crease and then fold out over that. And that's usually pretty relieving for the knee joint itself. If it's not, don't do it. But if you find that having that little bit of extra material, we'll call it, in at the back of the knee and helping that knee just kind of open up the back of that knee, take that version. And then we're going to go to the low back. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hug the right knee a little closer, letting that pelvis round lightly. And then let that knee come away from the body a little bit. It's not a huge motion. And exhale, hugging that right knee a little closer, letting the low back round into the ground. And inhale, letting that knee move up. One more time, exhale, rounding the low back down to the ground, hugging the knee in. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and let the knee come away from the body a little bit. So straighten your arms, shoulders in the sockets. And then slide your hands down so they're closer to your hip joint, behind the thigh if you're not already there. And then go ahead and push that right heel up to the sky, right? And as you push that right heel up to the sky, straightening that leg any amount, you might not straighten. It's okay if you don't, right? You're working it towards straight. And I want you to look at that knee and make sure that your knee is facing directly to the back of the room. If it's turned in or out is the normal one for most of us, right? We have to adjust the thigh bone, the femur bone, so that the knee is the same direction as the hip socket, or I could say the back of the mat. As you push your thigh into your hands pull the thigh back, you lengthen the spine, get that low back space, inhale, and exhale there. Go ahead and bend that right knee, putting that foot back down on the ground, and then take a moment, inhale, and exhale. We're not going to be in a very big rush to get anywhere, okay, Miss Julia? You're going to go ahead and you're bringing that left leg in. You're going to interlace, and again, I'm going to suggest you come behind the thigh today, and you bring those fingers all the way up into the knee crease, and then you bend that knee over the hands, right? So just starting to get some space behind the knee joint. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into that nice little rocking motion. So take an inhale, which is going to be neutral. And then with your exhale, you're going to pull the knee closer, letting the pelvis curl, right? Letting the low back come down to the ground. Inhale, let that knee come away from the body a little bit. Doesn't have to be a big move. And exhale, rounding the low back into the earth by hugging the knee in. Inhale and let that leg move away from the body a little bit. And exhale, go ahead and bring that on in. And then bring that leg away, straightening the arms, sliding the hands down closer to the hip, pushing the left heel up to the sky and lengthening that leg any amount. And again, we want to look at the knee for just a moment, and we want to make sure that our knee is facing directly behind us. So if we need to adjust the inner or the outer thigh, the work of it, right, to get that to neutral, we go ahead and we do that. Again, most of us will let the inner groin roll back behind us or just not activate. The outer thigh takes over. So if that's you, that inner groin has to work forward a little bit. And then from there, pushing that heel up. One more motion for the low back. You're gonna push your thigh into your hands, but your hands pull the thigh back, and that should give a little space between the floor and the low back, like a spatula amount. It's not a huge. Inhale, and then exhale. Go ahead and bring that leg down to the ground. So we're gonna look at thread the needle, and we're gonna go into it this way today for the health of the knee. You're gonna go ahead and you're gonna push that right heel up to the sky. Sometimes this can be elusive for friends with knee pain, right? But it's so great for the low back, so we're gonna give it a try. From there, I want you to, from your femur bone, right, let that outer thigh start to take the leg until it turns and externally rotates. Now from there, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna keep that foot flexed. You're gonna bend the knee and see if that right ankle can make it onto the left knee. And then you might just work from here. Again, this shouldn't be knee joint pain. If it is, it's not gonna work today, so you'll come out of it. And you might just hug the knees to the chest, right? But otherwise, I'm gonna assume we're in. I'm gonna assume we're okay. Foot is flexed, the knee is protected, the right thigh is really gently moving forward. You can either stay right here on the ground, or you can bring the legs in and interlace behind that left thigh. Now from there, right, get that right thigh to gently lift away from the right shoulder. I want you to imagine I have my hands right in the crease of your hips on your upper thighs, and I'm pulling your upper thighs forward so you get that low back space, yeah? Keep the low back space, and then maybe you have that left leg in just a little bit, but maybe not. It just depends on your body today. Inhale, and exhale. Go ahead and let that left foot come down to the ground. Let the right foot come down to the ground. Now we're going to reach that left heel up to the sky. Knee can be a little bit bent, that's fine. And again, we're going to use that thigh bone. We're going to use that external thigh, that external groin, sometimes I call it. I know that's not the proper anatomical term, but hopefully you got inner groin, outer groin. So use the outer groin to rotate the leg, external rotation, left toes point out. And then from there, you're going to bend the knee, bringing that heel, ankle to the right knee, and keep that foot flexed. That's your knee protection, right? If you're in the knee, get out, hug the legs in. Otherwise, from here, that left thigh continues to move forward gently. We might bring the legs in, we might not. We might interlace behind the right thigh. And then from there, again, I keep my arms pretty straight and the legs away from the body. Imagine me grabbing onto your thighs, the tops of your thighs, and pulling them forward so you get a little bit of low back space. And then let that left knee gently move away from the left shoulder. That might be plenty for you in that outer left hip. Keep the low back off the earth as you hug the right knee in, right? We don't want to train the back, the low back, to always be in a rounded position. We're working against that anyway with today's society and how we tend to sit, right? So much, and we're always rounding that low back. So we're trying to work against that right now and maintain our natural curves and isolate it in the outer hip. Inhale. And exhale, go ahead and bring that right foot down to the ground, bring that left foot down to the ground. So now we're gonna go into a little bit of core work, Miss Julia. I know you love your core stability. So I'm gonna move nice and slow, and I'm gonna move with a lot of integrity today. Hopefully you'll join me with that. You're gonna go ahead and turn the palms down and bring the arms in by the side. And as we push down lightly through our hands and our arms and our shoulders, right, it's a really light motion just so we keep a broad collarbone. We're going to keep our neck and our jaw soft so that they don't do the core work for us, right? Now before we go anywhere, I want you to pay attention to the low back. There should be a very little bit of space between the floor and the low back. Like I can't get my hand in there, that's borderline, right? But a spatula could definitely fit under there, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give pressure a little bit, a very little bit, on both sides. Both my upper back moving lightly in, right, and my low belly moving lightly in towards a center point, my side waist, so like a corset, right? But more than moving in, can you see if that can all lengthen all the way up through the crown of the head, and then keep all of that work. Don't let the low back flatten. Don't let the low belly reach up to the sky. Take an inhale. And then with an exhale, go ahead and see if you can lift that right leg into tabletop position, right? And I'm demonstrating if you don't know what tabletop is. Inhale and slowly bring that foot back down to the ground. First time it's just like, what? What are you doing? And then exhale. Again, zip up your zipper, but also a little pressure from the back side into the low back as the left leg comes into tabletop. So nothing moves in the pelvis. Inhale, bring that back down. So much of what I teach is isolation, right? And the more we isolate, the more stabilizers, the small muscles turn on. Exhale, right leg starts to move in. Don't let that right hip drop. And if it drops, I'm going to suggest you move slower and try to find that stability. Go ahead and bring that right foot back down to the ground, right? And then again, don't let the left hip drop. Exhale the left leg up into tabletop position. And inhale, bring that down. I'm a believer that it's not about having a lot, like 20 million sit-ups or any kind of thing like that, right? Exhale. I believe it comes from smaller movements where you move really slow, making sure you're turning on the proper muscles. Inhale, bring that back down. And the more you do that, the more you start to strengthen, right, the muscles that should be a little stronger that aren't usually engaged. And exhale, left leg comes up in a tabletop. And then when we start to release the muscles, the big muscles, the gross muscles, we call them, right, that tend to take over and do the work for you and get really, really strong and really tight, and that's not healthy either. And then from there, soften. Go ahead and bring those knees in towards the chest, and this time you get to round the low back into the ground, right? So those hips can, buttocks bones can lift up just a little bit, and you can go ahead and hug those knees towards the chest, rounding that low back. It should feel good. If it doesn't, get out. Maybe you rock a little bit from side to side. And let's do one more piece down here, and then we'll come on up. So we're going to go into another little stretch for the whole body, and then particularly the side body, right? So you're going to extend those legs all the way forward, flexing the feet, pushing into an imaginary wall. If your heels pop up off the ground, you're hyperextending. That could be a reason you have knee issues, right? So get the heels and the thighs to work down simultaneously. And then from there, reach your fingertips up to the sky, sliding the shoulders in the sockets, shoulder blades down the back. And again, can you find that corset, right? Not that it just moves into the center, but it lengthens all the way up through the crown of the head. Now keep all of that stabilized, right? Inhale, start to reach the arms overhead. But notice the low floating ribs. If they're lifting up as you're reaching the arms overhead, I can guarantee that's going to go into your low back and not feel great. So only go as far overhead with the arms as you can without those low floating ribs coming off the earth. Our natural curves, we're trying to stabilize. Now go ahead and push your right heel forward and your right fingertips back and lengthen the right side body. And come back to what we'll call neutral. And then push your left heel forward and your left fingertips reach back, lengthen the whole left side body. And inhale back to neutral. Keep that back body heavy. Right heel forward, right fingertips back. And exhale, neutral. And left fingertips back, left heel forward, lengthen. And come back to neutral. One more piece. Your right fingers and your left heel. Your right fingers and your left heel. So now we're at a diagonal line that moves through the internal body. Pause and stay there. And then go ahead and release that. And this time it's going to be your right heel and your left fingertips. Right heel, left fingertips, they reach away from each other. And again, just noticing that internal diagonal line. And then go ahead and release that. Bring the arms back down by the sides. Soften the legs. Take 2 soft belly breaths. Inhale. You can close the eyes. Exhale. One more. Take an inhale. And exhale. Go ahead and open those eyes if you had them closed. Put your feet on the ground one at a time. TV arms out to the side, and again, one at a time. Bring those legs in, but try not to let the pelvis move too much, right? You can core work everywhere, by the way. Take an inhale. With an exhale, let the legs come on over, leaving the legs a little bit higher, but that said, with the low back issues, the knees might feel better a little bit away from the body. So kind of feel that out for yourself. What feels best twist-wise for you today? And then maybe turn the head to the left, and then pause there for a breath. Inhale. And exhale. Use an inhale, left side waist, low belly, bring you up. And start with the knees closer, right? Start to head over to the left, bringing the left pinky toes down. But again, if the knees feel better coming away from the body a little bit, allow that. And then maybe turn the head to the right, softening the right shoulder down, and breathe into the right side body. Inhale. And exhale. Right side waist, low belly, brings you back up. You're going to go ahead and grab onto the backs of the knees, and with an inhale, rock the hips up a little bit. Exhale, pull the belly in, and come on up to a rocked up position. May take you a couple of rocks, that's okay.
boat pose for the core. Pardon me. So grabbing onto the backs of the thighs, we're gonna start with our feet on the ground. And you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna slide your shoulder blades down your back and get nice and long in the spine. As a matter of fact, actually, let's bring our fingertips back behind us. If you can face your fingers towards your hips, you're going to come onto fingertips, and hopefully that stays out of the carpal tunnel, Julia. If not, go right back to here, right? But on fingertips, and I'm not really pressing into them or putting weight in them. I'm pressing into them lightly, moving my elbows back, moving my shoulders back, and finding that long, long spine. Now keep that and transfer one hand at a time onto your thighs. And keep that, right? And maybe you walk up to tippy toes. And now to come into balance, you might want to walk back just a little bit. But I'm not going to have you round your back, your low back behind you, right? I love for you to keep your low back in and try to find your balanced position. Again, I don't want to train that low back to constantly be rounded behind you. That may very well be part of what your issues are and what's causing pain in the low back. I'm not sure, and I'm not with you, right? But and I remember certain things about your body, but that part I can't remember, right? So we're just trying to train natural curves of our spine, pelvis stability, so that all of that supports everything else around it. Take one more breath, inhale, and exhale. So we're gonna move into this slowly. So maybe this isn't available with the knees, depends on your body. But if you can cross the shins, right, we'll go into that outer hip, and you can always put a blanket underneath you or sit up a little higher, right? Inhale, get nice and tall, but I'll be quick about it in case this isn't available. You can just let the legs come in front of you and do a forward fold without the knees bent, right? And go ahead and soften in. You can put blocks underneath knees. There's lots of tricks. And inhale, reach that chest forward. Go ahead and grab onto the backs of the knees and bring those feet back onto the ground. Stage 2, right? We're not in a rush to get anywhere, friends. If we can find our stability here, we can bring it with us when we go into more challenging things. Again, I'm going to have my feet on the ground. I'm going to pretend my hands are behind me, and I'm going to find that beautiful spinal work that we just had. Right? I'm going to make sure that low back is pulling inside my natural lumbar curve. I'm going to walk back on my tippy toes and maybe let the whole body walk back or walk in and find my balance point. I might keep my toes on the ground, and if that's what helps that low back stay pulled in, I'm going to do that to ensure that I keep my natural curves, right? But maybe you can keep your natural curves and still bring the legs up. Now, when I do this, my legs would love to bow out, right? And that's a whole other issue with outer hips and some other things. But I'm going to see if you can get those inner groin to rotate forward by pushing through the ball mounds of the toes, so martini or Barbie toes, right? And whatever level it is for you. And you might start to straighten your legs. We're not going to let go of the hands today, right? And we're going to keep that low back in and keep all of our natural curves. And again, why are you always in a rush to go to that higher, quotes, that deeper, quote, place, right? Are you getting work here? Awesome. Put your left shin in front of your right. Sit up nice and tall. Support knees. Extend legs. If it's not available, extend one leg, etc. Inhale and get really tall. And then from the pelvis, we start that folding over. And we're just going to fold in for just a moment just to get that outer hip and that low back. And inhale, reaching the chest forward, walking the hands back and coming up. One more piece and then we're done with boat for the day. Everything but a little quicker. Find the spine. Find your balance point on the back of the buttocks bones. Maybe the legs lift, but we push through the ball mounds of the toes. Even if they're down here, we can still do that, right? To find the inner leg line, outer hips hugging in, and then can you pull that low belly all the way up through the crown of the head? Find that corset action. Now, some of my friends, you might lay out into half boat pose. I'm going to walk on the thighs today. Again, I'm using support today to make sure I keep my alignment. As I push my feet out, I'm going to start to walk down my thighs. I'm going to slide my shoulder blades down my back. I don't want to go to the ground because I got to come back up. Inhale, pull the low belly in, 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 and here we go. Let's go into child's pose. I'm not going to do hands and knees because of the carpal tunnel, but if you can take a moment just to get yourself in transition in child's pose for the low back, that's a wonderful low back stretch. Big toes touch, knees a little wide, and if the knees give you a hard time, Julia, in this pose, you can lay on your back and hug the knees in. But otherwise, right, you can take a blanket that's folded like this, and you can always hit pause, of course, and you're gonna bring it right in, right, to the knee crease, and then hold that blanket in and down as you fold over it. And it's just how we did with our hands earlier, and this is something that makes a lot of people with knee pain, it makes child's pose accessible to them so that they can do it, right? And again, come out if it's not right for you and lay down on the ground. Go ahead and lay down. Let those arms come out in front of you if that's available in your shoulder girdle. Arms can be by the side, but I'll always encourage people to be out front because that starts to open up the arm line that we're looking for, right? To start to do other things like child's downward dogs and things like that. One more breath, inhale. Inhale to that low back, by the way. And exhale, soften the hips to the heels. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to press those hands down and straighten the arms out. So moving into an extended child's pose. And again, this shouldn't affect your carpal tunnel necessarily. It might though. If it does, then you're just going to go right back to the relaxed version. But otherwise, if it's available, this can be a really great way to still get into the hands and the wrists and provide strength without inflaming the carpals, right? So as you push down into your fingers, and yes, your palms, but especially you, Miss Julia, I want you to make sure you use your finger pads so that the weight is not all in the heel of the hands and right by the carpal tunnel, right? So making sure that we've got all that space and not as much pressure. You can always come onto fingertips if it's not accessible, and that might make it accessible. Otherwise, just rest the arms down, inhale. And push a little forward as well as down, right? Make that gentle. See if the buttocks bones can reach further back. And then go ahead and come on up. And we're going to remove that blanket if you used a blanket behind your legs. And then let's go ahead and come to standing. We'll go into some downward dogs, but let's do it from another position so we're not on our wrist too long. Curl your toes under, and then go ahead and start to reach the butt up towards the sky. Grab onto your elbow points, bend the knees, and go ahead and start to soften down in, letting that spine start to unwind. 2 breaths. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale here. And exhale. Go ahead and put your hands on your shins. And inhale, straighten the arms, reaching the chest forward, finding that strength in your upper mid-back. Exhale, folding in. One more of those. Hands on the shins. Inhale, reaching that chest forward, lengthening. And exhale, folding. One more time. Inhale, reach the chest forward. So now right here, check in, Miss Julia. Oftentimes a sway back, and people who have low back pain, this may or may not be you, but check. Pull that low belly up just a little bit. See if you can lengthen the low back and support it. And then from there, hands on the hips, elbows up. Inhale, go ahead and come all the way up. Woohoo, we made it to our feet. Go ahead and come forward to the top of your mat. And then let's go ahead and go into a couple of half salutations just to start warming up the body. And then we're going to go into some standing poses. I know you wanted some standing poses in your sequence. So inhale, reach those arms out and up. And exhale, folding in. Feel free to bend those knees. Might feel better all the way around on the low back and the knees. Hands on the shins. Inhale, reaching that chest forward. Pull that low belly up just a little bit. Support the low back, please. Exhale and fold in. Inhale those arms out wide. Pull that belly in. Come all the way up to standing. Arms might reach overhead if that feels okay. And then exhale, reach those arms out and down. And going in one more time. Inhale, just feel this one in the body. How's that body feeling today? And exhale and fold in, low belly pulling up to support. Inhale, go ahead and reach that chest forward. Exhale and fold. Inhale. Hands can always come on the hips if the low back is sensitive. I would suggest it right when you come up, and then you can extend the arms if you still want that arm extension. Exhale, reaching those arms out and down. Okay, so let's go ahead and go right into a couple of standing poses. So stand in the middle of your mat, right? If you need to take a moment, hit pause to redo your device or whatever so you can see it. But you want a long ways, we're into some standing poses. Go ahead and put your hands on your hips, and Julia, we're just gonna step nice and wide since we know our knees and our low back hurt a little bit. That's just a gentler way to come in, right? And you wanna try and have your ankles underneath your wrists-ish, and we'll play with that a little bit when we go in. We're gonna go to the right first, and I'm gonna mirror since it's just me and not a student, right? So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna turn our left toes in or kick that left heel back, and then turn that whole right leg out. Make sure your heel is in line with your arch, and then straighten both legs for a moment. And again, I don't remember if you're prone towards hyperextension, but if you are, and that's part of the knee issues, right? A little bit of pressure from the calf side to make sure you don't lock the knee. And then from there, check into the hips. So I don't really work from the hips very often, right? A little bit I will, but usually I work from the feet because the feet start to correct the pelvis, right? So if I put weight into the ball out of my right toe, and I start to get this right hip to come into the socket, this naturally starts to lift, yeah? And if I push down like crazy through that outer back heel and this thigh turns on, right, this starts to get this piece of the pelvis into neutral. So just take a moment and find out what's happening there, right? And then inhale those arms out wide. Now when you come in, try not to let that fall down, right? Try to keep that the right hip point up. Take an inhale, and with an exhale, go ahead and bend the knee, but try to keep that pelvis lifted or neutral more than anything, really. Here we are, pelvis neutrality again, my thing. Inhale, go ahead and come all the way back up. I know I harp on it, but holy crap, is it important for the spine and everything out of it. Go ahead and bend that knee. Look at the knee. Make sure your knee is going over your second toe, Miss Julia. That is knee health. And inhale. And again, my friends who aren't Julia, pretend you're Julia today. Go ahead and bend that knee, moving in, pulling the frontal hip point up, and then pausing and making sure your ankle is underneath your knee. That is knee health as well. Knee over second toe, and now try to suck that hip into the socket and see how much that placement of the femur in the socket affects the knee joint itself, yeah? Pushing that back heel down, back thigh turns on, chest to the long edge of the mat, and then maybe, right, if those shoulders can soften down, you have room to turn the head and look beyond those right fingertips. And inhale, go ahead and straighten the leg. We're gonna go right into triangle today. So you're gonna go ahead, and again, if the leg hyperextends or the knee locks, I could say, you're gonna move that calf forward just a little bit so you don't lock your knee. Shift your right hip back. I'm a knee locker. I have to do it. It's extra work, but but we have to do it to keep the knee healthy, right? And then lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. And then go ahead and set that hand down. If you have a block and you wanna work with a block, you can. Reach the left hand up. I meant to address that. That's why I had you get 2 blocks. Oops, a daisy. Slide the shoulders away from the ears, right? And again, I'm not bearing weight in this hand. My right hand, I'm simply placing it. And then I push down through the ball out of that toe, hip in the socket, back heel down, back thigh back, low belly pull up so I don't go into sway back. I keep my low back healthy here. And I lengthen my crown of my head away from my left heel. And then inhale, come all the way back up. Go ahead and put those hands on the hips. Turn those toes towards me and moving towards the other side. So turn the right toes in or kick the heel back. Turn the whole left leg out. Ensure you have your heel, left heel, aligned with your right arch. And then see if your chest can turn towards the long edge of the mat. Inhale the arms out wide. And exhale, bend the left knee. And inhale, straighten. I always say the first one is just kind of like, what's happening in there today? Okay, so keep that. Oh, I didn't talk you through the whole gamut. Pause, stay up. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's mash the other side. That was my bad. Push into the ball onto that left toe to get that left hip in the socket, right? Push that back heel down to get this thigh turned on, and naturally the pelvis starts to take care of itself. Now keep that left hip point up. Inhale the arms out wide, but we're still going to be called this is number 2, even though I didn't put it at the front. Go ahead and bend that knee and keep that hip point up, knee over second toe. So that's what I want you to check this time. And then inhale, go ahead and straighten. And this time when you bend, you want to make sure the knee goes over the second toe, and then you're going to pause. You want to make sure your ankle's underneath your knee. So if it's too far back, we move it forward. If it's too far forward, we move it back, right? And a little bit of weight in that heel so that my hamstring fires up to turn on. I slide my shoulder blades down my back, and then maybe I turn that head to look beyond the left fingertips. Maybe I don't. If my neck is cranky, I just keep looking straight forward. And then inhale, we're gonna move in a triangle. So you're gonna push in the ball onto that left toe to get that left hip to move in the socket. The knee should be facing that way, right? And then I'm gonna move that left hip back and I'm gonna lengthen. Again, if you hyperextend, a little bit of calf forward, bringing the hand down and simply placing it. Left fingertips reaching up. And then from there, slide the shoulder blades away from the ears. Lengthen the crown of the head out away from your right heel. But keep that left hip moving into the socket, right? So you get all that beautiful length moving like a starfish in many directions. And then inhale, go ahead and come all the way back up. Hands on the hips, toes straight forward, and heels together, toes together, heels together, toes together. Go ahead and walk that in until you can step it in, and just pause and pay attention. So part of the reason I'm addressing the feet and trying to say the pelvis is because the pelvis is pretty crucial for keeping that low back nice and protected when you're moving into poses, holding poses. But in the holding of the poses most definitely, but boy, transitions, they're really rough on the body. And if you talk to a lot of injured people in general, but yogis, that's often where the injury happens. It happens when they're in transition doing something, right? Not when they're in holding something. So take one more breath, inhale, and exhale. We're gonna go into one more externally rotated standing pose. Now you may want the block for this one. We're gonna move into side angle, right? So you can just put a block on one side or the other, and you can do it without, and I'll tell you how to do that when you get in. Now from there, bend the knees and go ahead and step those feet nice and wide again. Turning to the right, left toes in, left heel back. Turn the whole right leg out. Heel in line with arch. Calf a little forward if you're a hyperextender. You're just going to put that in because a lot of times people have knee issues because of that. So make sure it's not that's causing the knee issue. Pushing the ball out of the toe down, pushing that back heel down. Does that help that pelvis start to find neutral? Inhale the arms out wide, chest to the long edge. And exhale, bending that knee, warrior two, weight in the right heel. And then lengthen and lengthen and lengthen. Now if you don't have a block, you can put the arm on the knee. If you have a block, I'm going to suggest you use it and bring it right in because it's pretty much the same. Oh, you know what? No, you have carpal tunnel, Julia. You're probably going to be better off without that block, but you can use it, right? But I'll address this pose because then you're not putting weight on your wrist. Put your right hand on your hip. And then go ahead and see if you can bend in a little deeper into that front leg, right? By putting the weight in the heel. Now push that back heel down, and can you reach the crown of the head up? Can you pull the low belly up just a little bit so the low back is supported here so you're not in sway back? Slide your right shoulder blade down your back and see if you can get a little bit of length through that right side body. Now reach the left fingertips down, turn the palm up to the ceiling, and then go ahead and reach that all the way over. If that's difficult, you can always reach straight forward and come over, and that's usually a little easier for most shoulders regardless of what's going on in them. And as that back heel pushes down and you reach the fingertips away, right, you might turn and look beyond the left bicep. Take one more breath, inhale. And exhale, maybe drop deeper into the bend, maybe not. And inhale, come on up through warrior two, taxing those legs. Straighten the legs, put the hands on the hips, turn the toes forward. The good news is, well, I don't know if it's good news, I'm doing it with you, so, I get to... I get to suffer with you as well. Although I don't find it super sufferful. Is that a word? Go ahead and turn your right toes in or kick the heel back and turn your whole left leg out. See, you don't have to be with me, Julie. I'm still just as weird, right? And then as you push down the palm onto that toe, calf forward if you're a hyperextender. As you push that back heel down, hopefully that starts to correct the pelvis a little bit, right? It just starts to move up the legs and into the pelvis. And then from there, arms out wide, inhale, with a little bit of weight in the heel. You don't have to lift your toes, I'm just showing you my weight is in my heel when I start to bend into warrior two. And then I'll reach forward, and I'm gonna place my forearm on my leg. Put your right hand on your right hip for a hot second. See if when you put the weight in that left heel, you can bend a little deeper in. And then push that right heel down and reach the crown of the head away from that. See if those frontal hip points can pull up a little bit so the low back is safe. Now, reach the right fingertips down, Turn the palm up and either reach all the way over, or you can always reach forward if that feels like it's a little much for your shoulder, right? Pinky finger rotates down so you can really get that shoulder in the socket, and then push down that back heel, reach all the way. See if you can slide that left shoulder into the socket a little bit deeper, and maybe you sink a little deeper in, and then take one more breath, inhale. With your exhale, lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. And then inhale, come all the way up to warrior two. Try to tax those legs. Straighten the leg, turn the toes forward, heels together, toes together, heels together, toes together, until you can walk that in. You can hear I'm a little out of breath, so you might be as well. Go ahead and slow your breath down. And so next we're going to go into chair pose. And so I'm going to have you turn back towards the front of your mat again, right? But I'm going to stay facing this way just for a moment and show you the front side view. So as you bring the ball mounds of the big toes together, right, we're going to sit in a chair pose and we're going to work on the breath a few times. What this is going to do is it's going to start to help, you know, when we follow the alignment, we make sure our knees are in alignment, we can then start to strengthen the muscles around the knees so that we hopefully can help with that pain in the knees, right? Make them stronger, make them healthier. So you walk the ball mounds of the big toes together, right? And then once you walk the ball mounds of the big toes together, you're going to go ahead and you're going to make sure you're standing in mountain pose. What do I mean by that, right? Just notice what your pattern is. And again, I'm going from memory here. It's been a while since I've worked with your body, but it's the usually the thighs are a little forward, right? And then the pelvis comes a little forward, and then the chest moves back, the upper back, a little extra back bend there, that's not necessary. And then our head is usually a little forward. So I'm exaggerating, but not by a lot. Usually it looks like this, you know, it's not quite as extreme, but that's still the position. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to see if you can move your thighs back and move a little bit of the weight into the heels. Now when I do that, my butt sticks out, right? So I want to keep my thighs back, but I'm going to see if I can start to move my buttocks flesh down without slamming anything in or shoving my thighs forward again, right? I move nice and gently. I move those buttocks bones down and I try to open up right here at my psoas, right? And then from there, move those shoulder heads back, shoulder blades down the back, and just check in if you tend to be a rib bower outer. See if you can lengthen your back ribs up off of your back waist. Now inhale, reach those arms out and up. And then with your exhale, you're going to pretend there's a chair behind you, and you're going to go to sit down on that chair and just bend the knees. First one's just kind of a baby one. Now look down and make sure your knees are going over your second toes. I can let you go a little wider with the feet, but just make sure that your knees are in alignment, please. And then inhale, push those heels down to come on up. You can always put your hands on your hips if the arms are too much, right? Exhale, go ahead and start to sit down into that imaginary chair, putting the weight in the heels, pulling the low belly up to keep the low back long. And inhale, push the inner heels down to bring that all the way back up. We're going to do this 3 more times. Exhale, sitting on down. Maybe each time you challenge yourself to try to come down a little lower, assuming this feels good in the knees, right? Inhale, and by feeling good in the knees, I don't mean it's like, oh, this is amazing. I mean like they're not hurting and we're working the muscles around them properly. Exhale, pull the low belly in, buttocks flesh towards the ground, right? Weight in the heels, and slowly we start to straighten. Again, the slower we work, the more we usually start to engage all of the little stabilizers. One more time, we're going to drop in, and we're going to pause, and we're going to hold there, and we're going to try and drop our buttocks down as low as we can in our body towards the height of the knees, but and those arms might be up, hands might be on hips, but either way, we move the shoulder blades down the back and we reach the chest forward between where the imaginary hands are if they're not out there for you. Hug the outer hips in, pull the low belly up, put the weight in the heels, and inhale, come all the way back up. Go ahead and reach those arms out and down, and hopefully you feel just a little bit of fire in a good way around those knees. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to come all the way onto our back. You can get down there however, or to our buttocks. You can get down there however you want to, Miss Julia. So let's do a couple of seated poses from here. You can always sit up on a blanket. I know I didn't say you needed one, but that's just dependent on how you're feeling today. You can sit up on a blanket, and why would you? You do that if your pelvis rolls behind you. Again, there's nothing healthy about being in this position a majority of the time. And I know very few people who don't sleep on their sides, so we're in it again for another 7, 6, depending on how many hours a night. So we want to try and bring that in. If you cannot do that, fingertips can be by your side. You're going to sit up on something until you can find that in the pelvis. And with the legs wide, comfortable wide, you're not killing yourself yet, right? We're looking for that inner groin stretch. If we can't find the pelvis, we bend the knees to find it, and then we start to lengthen and straighten any amount. Knees can stay a little bent. And then from there, we pull the low belly in just so we have a little support in the low back. Maybe we start to fold out over the legs, right? And so again, with your body, if I remember correctly, right, we need to ground the buttocks bones, so pulling that low belly in a little bit so the buttocks bones stay down. And you can reach those arms out. Oh, we didn't even do any downward dog. Oh, Julia, I'll write another one and I'll downward dogs for you. So we'll pretend downward dog right now. As you reach those arms forward, right, you're going to push your hands forward and down and see if you can get the buttocks bones to ground down. It'll feel like a little low back rounding, but we actually want to go ahead and just see if we can keep the length of the low back, right? Now, keep that low back, keep the buttocks bones down, but now traction your hands back to reach the chest a little forward. Turn the legs on again, inner heels out, pinky toes back, and then go ahead and fold in the rest of the way. And you can go ahead and let the forearms go wide or walk the arms out a little further, or whatever variation in your arms feels good, right? And take 3 breaths from there. Inhale. And exhale. Keep those legs turned on, both the heels and the thighs pushing down simultaneously. And you're probably about on an exhale in your second breath. I'll call it the third, but if you're not with me, it's okay. Inhale. And exhale. And then with your inhale, reach the chest forward. Come all the way up. Grab your outer knees and bring the soles of the feet forward in front of you. Bring the fingertips back. Again, sitting on something or bending the knees to find that low back can pull in and you have your natural lumbar curve, right? And then maybe the legs straighten out in front of you, but maybe they do not. Make sure that the knees and the thighs and the toes are all pointing up. And then from there, you can move those arms forward and you can inhale, right? Lengthen, and then exhale, pulling that low belly in a little bit so that low back stays long. You'll start that journey. And then right about here, I'm starting to feel my hamstrings, right? Am I at my edge? No, not necessarily, but I don't want to be all the way in to find these little fine-tuning pieces, right? So I'm going to pull against my legs to reach my chest forward. One more time, I'm going to pull that low back into its natural curve. And then I'm going to bend my elbows wide as I pull myself not down, but forward and up beyond my toes. And right about here, right, is about 75% into my edge. And I'm going to suggest that we always work from there, right? I think we always go to just the beginning of the edge where it's like, oh, okay, there they are, I feel them. Rather than that, oh, my eyebrows are suddenly lifting up, and oh, my eyes are really big and I have all this stress. My jaw is clenched, right? Find that happy medium, please. Inner heels forward, pull the pinky toe edge back. Soften down in. 3 breaths. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. One more time, check into the legs. Try and turn them on gently. And exhale, softening in that last little bit. You may have a little more now that you've been there, maybe not. Inhale, reaching the chest forward and lengthening the spine on the journey up again, watching our transitions. Putting our buttocks in the middle of our mat. Feet on the ground, grabbing the backs of the knees. I'm going to push like the Dickens through the ball mounds of my toes so that my knees stay in line with my buttocks bones. Pulling the low belly in, rounding the low back, sliding the shoulder blades down the back, and lowering myself down to the ground. Start by bringing those knees in. Put your hands on your kneecaps and circle your knees together. And that should feel pretty groovy on that low back. I mean, it might not, and if it doesn't, don't do it. But usually, for my low back friends, this one's just like, oh yes, please. Go ahead and go the other direction.
And let's do one more twist, Miss Julia, and then we get corpse pose, Shavasana. Put your feet on the ground with the knees bent. You're going to pick your hips up and move them a little bit to the left, just a little bit. It's not extreme. Straighten the right leg. Bring the left leg in. Right hand to outer left thigh. Left arm tees out. Inhale. Exhale, roll onto right side body. You let the left hip lift. And don't try to slam the knee to the ground or anything like that, right? Turn your head to the left and let it be about the left shoulder staying down. And then let that left hip just move as far away from as it comfortably can. The right hand's not pulling so much as it just is a weight on that leg. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale, come back up. Feet on the ground, picking the hips up, moving the hips right of center. Straightening left leg, bringing right knee in. Left hand, outer right thigh, right arm, tees out. Inhale. Exhale, rolling on to left side body. And again, look to the right and soften the right shoulder down. Now try to let that be a priority, right? It doesn't have to stay drilled to the ground or anything, but let it soften down, and then let the right hip move forward and away on a diagonal. And then let the left hand just simply weight the right leg in. Inhale. Exhale. And inhale, roll onto your back again. Feet on the ground, pick those hips up and make sure that they are in alignment with the rest of your spine. If you're not sure, you can pick up your head and look down, and you should have a seam that would run from the middle of your forehead, your nose, the middle of your chin, all the way down your chest to your pubic bone. And then lay the head back down. Now again, since I know you struggle with having low back pain, it's probably going to feel better to have the feet on the ground and the knees bent, but you can always extend. And you know, if you're in your home, another happy medium, Julia, that's actually pretty, I love this one. When I had low back issues, right, I would try to start to move towards straight-legged, and putting a blanket underneath your thighs, or even two blankets, can sometimes do that for you. It gives you just enough low back room. That said, if you don't have a blanket next to you, or you just don't want to bother, right, you can always put the feet on the ground. Walk them out just a little bit so your knees aren't so scrunched. Walk the feet a little wider than the knees. Turn the toes in a little bit, pigeon-toed, right? And let the knees move towards each other. Again, they never have to touch. We're just looking for softness in the hips, that's all. Shoulder blades down the back, arms out, palms up. Softening. And just like we did at the beginning of class, scan from the crown of the head all the way down through the tips of the toes. Just noticing the body, what's going on in there. I was going to say today, but you know, it's just, what, an hour later? And notice how different it is than when we first started. I think the physical practice of yoga is a great exploration of impermanence. And I'm going to take my voice out, Miss Julia. I will still be here to talk you out of Shavasana. But I want you to know that I'll be quiet so that you don't have to open up and see if the video is still going or any such thing. I will come back in and talk you out in a little bit. So Miss Julia, you can hit pause or just let it roll through, and you can continue to lie here if it's feeling really wonderful. I'm going to suggest you do. But otherwise, bring your awareness back to your breath. Maybe wiggle fingers and toes. Scrunch face muscles, stretch arms overhead, maybe stretch the legs long. Any of that stuff is on the table. And then from there, you're going to roll over to your right. You can use that right arm as a pillow, left hand in front of the chest. It might even feel nice to bring the knees a little closer to the body. That's usually really nice on the low back. Okay. And then pushing the ground away, we come on up to a seated position. You can always sit up on something. You guys know I'm a huge advocate of getting the hips higher than the knees for the health of the hips and the knees, the pelvis, the low back, all of it. It's all interrelated, right? Sitting up nice and tall. Noticing and just being that witness one more time, what is going on in that physical body at this exact moment. Bring your palms together at your chest. Take a big ol' inhale. Exhale, bow your head towards your heart. Take a moment to be grateful for at least one thing. And Miss Julia, let's take a moment actually together and let's be grateful for your knees and your low back and your wrists, which do so very much for you, and just remind them that we are trying to help them the best we can to heal. We know that that is what they're doing, right? Trying to heal, and we're going to try to facilitate that. Honoring the light that shines within. Namaste. May you be blessed.